Hi everyone, just a quick note right here at the beginning. These first few episodes were recorded in clusters over the course of a year, so you may notice a few changes in style and production value. Just bear with us for the first 5 episodes or so, and then things should level out. You know what I've been thinking a lot about lately?
No, actually, I don't.
Mead.
Mead? Like the alcohol thing?
No, like meads. Like the meads, you know what I mean? No, you don't.
No.
I'm talking about classical Persia.
Oh. Ooh, that's a good way to pick up a girl, man.
Works every time. Right.
All right, so you've been thinking about mead.
Yes, in particular, how the Medes got their butts kicked by Cyrus the Great.
Okay. Never heard of him.
You've never heard of Cyrus. All right, well, I'm going to tell you about Cyrus. We don't know exactly when he was born. There's not good accounts. There's a few problems that come up when you're talking about Cyrus, and that is his reign occurred like right around the time where history starts to get reliable.
Oh, okay.
So we know that when he died. We know for sure when his reign ended, but we don't know for sure when it began. It's expected to have been about 30 years. So he was a pretty good ruler, lasting for 30 years, you know.
30 years, yeah, when, 20 years old is middle-aged and you're married at 15.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people have big lists of titles, but Cyrus was probably one of the ones who started this trend.
Of getting titles?
Of getting titles, yeah. He had lots and lots of titles. The most important one is King of the Four Corners of the World.
Okay.
So that should just give you an idea of how massive Cyrus's empire was, and it was massive.
Or how little they knew about the world.
I suppose.
If you want to be cynical.
Well, strictly speaking, Cyrus's empire was the largest ever for a very long time. When it was first established, it was certainly the largest, and another didn't come to rival it until probably until the Muslim conquest.
The Muslim conquest, and that was when? In the are we talking 700s or what?
Not quite 700s. The Prophet lived in the 8th century, if I recall correctly. So the Muslim conquest contains probably more like the 8th, 9th, and 10th century. So
okay.
He was a good 1,000 years where an empire of this size was unrivaled. It contained almost all of Anatolia, so modern-day Turkey, down to the Arabian Peninsula, including Syria and the Tigris and Euphrates Valley and Palestine, and all the way to the Indus Valley in the northern edge of India, and north to the Aral Sea, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. So this was a pretty big place.
So it makes sense that it's the four corners of the world, because he sees oceans at the edge of each part of his empire, and where he doesn't see ocean, he sees desert, right? Looking into Africa?
Yeah, right. Actually, that's an excellent point, right? So, he's bordered on the east, on the west by the Greek city-states, on the south by the Arabian Desert, on the east by the Gobi Desert and the Himalayas, and on the north by the steppe, the Asian steppe, which is notoriously difficult to conquer and hold land in.
Yeah, nor is it particularly rewarding to own that land in.
Yeah. If you're not, it's not friendly for agricultural societies. I think that's the best way to put it.
So you said that Cyrus came at the time when history starts to get reliable, but we also say that he was the biggest empire, ever. How do we? I think we can still rely on that information, because had someone else been that big of an empire, we would have known about it, you know? It's not even like there's a competition between two people where the details get muddled by history. It's just Cyrus and then everybody else,
yes,
right?
Almost certainly. So we do know of empires that existed in prehistory. And actually, on the topic of the historical record, a part of the problem of describing the rise of Cyrus and his Achaemenid Empire is that for about half of his empire, there really wasn't much of a historical record. Writing did not exist in a significant capacity in the eastern part of what we know as the Persian Empire. So the Indus Valley civilization, the Indians, the Kyrgyz, and the Turks in the north, they do not have excellent records of this time period, whereas in the west, we do.
And what are we defining as the west?
In Media and in Asia Minor.
And how close is Media to Greece?
Media it was basically the Persian Empire before the Persians got there. Or maybe not so much before the Persians got there, but before the Persians were significant. The Medians, they are an Iranian tribe. They come from the central area of Iran. The Persians come from the south. That's why it's called the Persian Gulf.
Okay.
The Median Empire was fairly long-lasting. It lasted from about the Bronze Age collapse, which might be a topic for another time. I don't know. There's a real good Crash Course History video on it. Up through about, 800, 900 BC. When the Persians and Cyrus start to enter the story.
Okay. And when was Socrates alive? Because Socrates was very much against writing.
Oh, yes, that's right. Socrates wasn't a big fan of writing either. But he came a little bit later. Actually, did he come later? Wait. Okay, yeah. Socrates comes around about 100 years after the reign of Cyrus. So,
okay.
The political landscape that Socrates lived in was already used to having this humongous Persian Empire.
Okay. Gotcha.
And if I'm not mistaken, Socrates was around shortly after the time of the Persian Wars.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was born just after the Persian Wars. So in his childhood, he might have known Xerxes. And other than that, what?
I'm just imagining Socrates and Xerxes playing around in the playground. Throwing rocks at each other, climbing trees, playing in the watering hole. It's just ridiculous. And then the things they go on to do. It's just, I don't know. Sorry. Okay.
What do you think Xerxes would have? What do you think Xerxes' view on justice is?
Oh wow, misguided. I think he would have left by page 10.
I think he would have stayed a little bit longer. I can totally see Xerxes taking the place of Thrasymachus.
Yeah, but I mean, yes, that's the obvious place for him to take, but don't you think he would get angrier? I mean, maybe I have a very jaded view of Xerxes that is clouded by the fact that I watched 300, but...
To be honest, I don't know a whole bunch about him. All I know is that the name Xerxes is kind of interesting.
Well, I'm planning to look at Xerxes in the next few episodes here, so right. If you really want to know about Xerxes, pause and skip to insert episode name here, and we'll tell you all about him.
Sounds like a plan. Okay.
Yeah, we'll put it on the back burner.
So, we do know pretty well about more so than his conquest of the Medians, we know about his conquest of the Lydians. Now, the Lydians were a Greek-derived people that were living in Anatolia, in Asia Minor. We don't know exactly when this happened. Obviously, it happened after he conquered the Medes and after he conquered Babylon. But there are a couple of little interesting things about this story here.
Okay.
So, this war began when the Lydians, under their king Croesus, attacked the Achaemenid city of Pteria in Cappadocia.
Okay.
So Croesus, he in a fairly short amount of time, he besieged and captured this city and enslaved everybody there. So the Persians, naturally, were not pretty happy about this. So they responded first by attempting to incite rebellion.
Okay. Yep, that's cheaper.
Yeah, it's a whole lot cheaper. They sent emissaries to the Ionian Greek cities on the coast and asked them to rebel against the Lydian kingdom, but the Ionian cities turned them down. So then Cyrus raised an army and marched on Asia Minor, taking this opportunity to gain some new territory. That happens a lot in history. Empires will look for an excuse to go to war and then go to war and capture territory.
Yeah, when you got all these spears waiting around.
Yep.
Might as well use them.
The first campaign ended in the Battle of Pteria, in the same place where it all started, and that was more or less a stalemate. Nothing particularly interesting happened during that battle. Croesus went back to Sardis, and Cyrus went back to Pasargadae, his capital.
Okay. So even the number of people that died wasn't interesting.
Not superbly so.
Okay.
The Battle of Pteria actually represented a Lydian invasion. So after the war was declared, there were some skirmishes, and the Lydians attempted to invade Persia again. The battle was mostly indecisive. Croesus withdrew. Cyrus withdrew. Herodotus is one of our major sources for this battle. And according to Herodotus, the Lydians were backed off because they didn't have enough men.
Okay.
And then the Persians just kind of took the opportunity to establish their rule and fix the damage that was done by this little invasion. And then Cyrus chased Croesus back into Lydia. Now, Croesus, he wasn't actually expecting this. When he got back to his capital in Sardis, he sent emissaries to some of his allies in the Grecian states and asked them for help. But during that winter, before Croesus and his allies could unite and strike back, Cyrus arrived in Sardis and laid siege to the city.
Oh, before he could get help.
Yeah. And
Clever.
This is where the interesting battle of the day comes in. This is the Battle of Thimbra, or possibly Tumbra, depending on who you are and what language you speak. This battle does an excellent job of showcasing Cyrus's military genius.
Okay.
Kind of unfortunately, it's one of the only battles that we have good records for. But still, it's just pretty cool to see.
We'd have better records if Cyrus didn't draw all of his battle plans in the sand and instead emailed them to his commanders.
Well, he did send a couple emails, I think. Well, not really email. We do have some things that he wrote. So, in particular, we have this famous artifact called the Cyrus cylinder, which is a cylinder that's covered in writing. It was written by Cyrus or one of his scribes, praising him and setting up his genealogy. And actually, this is a very interesting document. There are some argument over exactly what it means. There are some people who argue that this was kind of a typical thing for Persian kings to do, to write something like this. Others claim that Cyrus kind of invented this practice, or that this is a unique object. But in some ways, it's a declaration of human rights.
Really?
Yeah. One of the reasons that Cyrus was able to keep his empire together was by treating his people really, really well.
Seems smart. When did the Hammurabi Code of Conduct come around?
Hammurabi was a king of Babylon approximately 1,000 years before Cyrus.
Okay. It was probably better than Hammurabi's then.
It was probably better than Hammurabi's. I don't have the text of it. That would be cool.
Maybe we can link it up in the show notes.
Yeah, if we can find it, we'll put it in the show notes. The Hammurabi Code and the Cyrus cylinder translation. But even if they are similar, the Cyrus cylinder represents a much more significant artifact just because of how huge and lasting this empire was.
Okay.
So anyway, continuing on with this battle here. So Cyrus had hoped to catch Croesus unprepared for battle. However, when the day came and the armies met in the field, the Lydians, led by Croesus, had more than twice as many men as the Persians.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, the Persians were outnumbered 2-1. So Cyrus had people from all over his empire, right? Persians and Babylonians and Medians.
Mm-hmm.
And Croesus had, of course, his own people from Lydia in Anatolia. And also he hired a whole bunch of Arab mercenaries and Babylonian mercenaries and Egyptian mercenaries.
Okay.
So this was a fairly large army. Before the battle, not Cyrus, but one of his commanders, a man named Harpagus, he had the idea to have Cyrus put his camels. So Cyrus, much like the rest of the ancient world, camels were not typically used in warfare. Cyrus's camels came from his baggage train. These weren't people that were trained for battle riding these camels. They were just a sudden idea to try to get the enemy cavalry off their guard. And it worked. So this camel corps, totally newly formed, he put them on the flanks in front of his foot soldiers.
Okay. I'm interested.
And this is this is probably what won the battle for him. It was one of the major things that won the battle for him. Because the Anatolian cavalry, they hadn't seen camels before. They're unfamiliar with camels. They hadn't seen camels before, and they hadn't smelled camels before.
Okay.
So this is kind of the same thing that happens much, much later with Hannibal, right? It's where
with elephants?
With the elephants, yeah. So he puts these camels out in front, and the enemy cavalry is like, "Whoa, what the heck is going on? What were these things? I'm going to run away." And before the battle even started, the enemy cavalry were defeated.
Okay.
So that helped to mitigate their overwhelming numerical inferiority. So now, okay, so according to the historian Xenophon, Cyrus had 196,000 men. I'm pretty sure that the numbers of this historical period are considered to be inflated by historians, but historians tend to go with them anyway because it kind of gives you an idea of what happened. So Cyrus had 196,000 men. Croesus had about 420,000 men. So a lot of dudes.
Yeah.
Cyrus, he deployed his army with the flanks pulled back. He covered his flanks with chariots and cavalry and his very best infantry units, the Immortals, which he had recently invented, and his camel corps. And so the battle began. As Cyrus expected, the two edges of the Lydian army, they moved outwards to envelop his army that he made artificially smaller. And this is where it gets kind of cool. So as the Lydian wings were moving in, there were hinge points where the line was weaker.
Yeah.
So the Persian archers and mobile towers, because mobile towers are a thing, were inside of this square of Persian forces. And then Cyrus gave the order to attack these hinges and the wings that were broken off from the army by cutting off the hinges. We don't totally know all of the numbers of what happens in this battle. We do have... here's the thing. So there are two historians that give us an account of this battle. There's Xenophon and Herodotus. Herodotus tells us what happened. Xenophon tells us the numbers.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of disorganization in the historical record, but we can be pretty sure. We don't know how many people were killed when, but we do know that this was a crushing defeat for the Lydians. When the battle was finished, all of Lydia was under Persian control, including the Greek cities on the coast.
Wow.
And this is another point where the historical record diverges. Herodotus says that Croesus was captured in the battle, and he was held in respect, and he was put at Cyrus's court. Another document called the Nabonidus Chronicle says that Croesus was killed in the fighting.
We'll never know.
We will never know. Though I think most historians tend towards the Croesus is alive side because there are things that he actually does later.
Oh. Yeah, I would hope he's alive then.
Not zombie Croesus.
Yeah.
So after Cyrus and Croesus, if he's alive, left, there was a short-lived rebellion, and this is the part where Croesus comes back into the story. It was apparently Croesus's idea that Cyrus should not kill all the people, rather he should, in one historian's words, turn the minds of the people to luxury. Cyrus sent one of his commanders to subdue the insurrection, but bring the leader of the insurrection, a man named Pactius, alive. And, well, when the commander got there, Pactius tried to run away, but he was captured and probably tortured to death.
So how
that's
is
that story.
Doing the luxury thing?
Well, the rest of the people weren't tortured to death. Only the leader was.
Oh, okay. So is this a outcropping of kill him with kindness?
Yeah, exactly. This is killing him with kindness. Except for that one dude. You kill him with fire. And...
Killing him.
or you just kill him, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, Cyrus's death is unknown. We've got a whole bunch of different contradictory accounts. I'm going to go with Herodotus's account because I really like Herodotus. So according to Herodotus, Cyrus died in a battle with the Masagatai. This is a tribe of people from the Khwarezm or Gobi deserts in the southern steppe region. So like Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. He was fighting in that area up there, expanding the eastern edge of the empire when he was killed in battle.
Okay.
And actually, this is another part where Croesus re-enters the story, because according to Herodotus, it was Croesus's idea to launch this invasion.
Alrighty.
So that's why I think that Croesus probably wasn't killed.
Yeah, that seems likely.
He was buried in his capital city in Pasargadae. His tomb actually still stands. It's been 2,500 years. You can go and visit Cyrus's tomb.
Okay.
It's in Pasargadae, which was his capital in the southern part of Iran, in the Fars province, pretty close to Shiraz, which is also very close to Persepolis, which would later become another Persian capital of Darius.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So this guy, Cyrus, he's also notable. He was able to hold this empire together with some really novel techniques that empires much, much later definitely borrowed from. So first of all, Cyrus was Zoroastrian. He followed the Zoroastrian religion.
Okay.
However, he did not make Zoroastrianism the official religion of his empire. There was no official religion of his empire.
Good. That's uncommon.
That is very uncommon, and it's definitely one of the things that helped him hold together. He's actually particularly liked by the Jewish people. The Jews were, at the time of Cyrus's rise, they were in exile in Babylon. And Nebuchadnezzar II had destroyed Jerusalem, and you can find this event in the Bible. This was during the time of the prophet Ezra.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So after Cyrus destroyed Babylon, he returned the Jews to their promised land and helped them rebuild the temple. He gave them money to rebuild Solomon's temple bigger than it was before. And actually, the edict that gave them this money is fully reproduced in the book of Ezra. So, the Jews loved him. Many other people loved him. He was actually given the title Messiah by the prophet Isaiah.
Wow, that's high praise.
For sure. Yeah, so Cyrus is like one of the ancient Jews' all-time favorite people.
Cool.
He also appears in the Quran.
Really?
Well, there's a bit of an argument there. Some people argue that this Quranic figure of, and I don't speak Arabic, so I'm going to get this name wrong. I'm going to try my best, though. Dhul Qarayan. Please forgive me. It is Cyrus. And this has been the case among Muslim scholars for a very long time. It's pretty much not quite doctrine, but almost there, that Cyrus is who this guy is referring to, and Dhul Qarayan is supposed to have been he was empowered by Allah to erect a wall in between man and these chaotic realms called Gog and Magog. Two other hypotheses for who Dhul Qarayan is include these names. Imrul Qais, who was a prince of the Lakhmids in Mesopotamia, and Messiah ben Joseph, who was a military savior expected by the Yemeni Jews.
Okay.
So that is the Jews in exile in Yemen, of course. Some other cool things that Cyrus the Great did. He built his empire as a multi-state empire. So there were 4 capital states, as they're called, right? These were not quite... Yeah, we can think of them as capital cities. There were 4 capital cities. Those were Pasargadae, Cyrus's own capital, Babylon, Susa, and Ecbatania. Each one had some serious autonomy. They were ruled by a satrap, which is kind of somewhere in between a governor and a king.
Yep.
And they all answered to Cyrus, but Cyrus kind of let them do their thing. So, of course, it was Cyrus who first established the Immortals, which are a very famous Persian army unit. 10,000 extremely highly trained soldiers that were always kept at a number of 10,000. There was always somebody waiting to replace any of the Immortals who die.
Yep.
And also, interestingly, he established the Chaparkhane, which was a postal system.
Really?
Yeah, kind of like the American Pony Express.
That's cool.
You could get a package or a letter across the Persian Empire under Cyrus pretty quickly.
That's cool.
That's really cool. And yeah, so Cyrus's empire, most importantly, was one of the first multi-ethnic empires. So maybe you could call it the first true empire, where there is one ethnic group that ruled over the rest, but they were all equally part of the empire, with a bunch of different countries, races, languages, religions, all ruled by one central government.
With minimal slavery.
I don't know that for sure.
Like, you didn't enslave all of the Jews.
Yes, for sure. He didn't enslave the people that he conquered. He enrolled them into his empire.
Yeah.
And this is a system of governorship that was copied a lot by the later Iranian empires, the Seleucids, Parthians, and Sasanians, but also by the Romans and not by Alexander.
Yes.
Which is kind of why that went bad after he died.
Yeah.
And we're probably going to talk about Alexander soon.
Yes, I look forward to it.
Yes, Cyrus is often treated as like an archetypical wise ruler. He is one of the many embodiments of like a really good king. And so many much later civilizations used his work and his style of rule as a basis for their own. For example, in all three of Thomas Jefferson's libraries, there is a copy of the Cyropedia, a biography of Cyrus.
Really? That's cool. Withstood the test of time.
Sure did.
And I wonder what other books made it into all three of his libraries. You know, do you think it's the Bible and then the Cyropedia and then the Oxford Dictionary?
Well, the Oxford Dictionary didn't exist yet.
Yeah, I figured.
But I know that
Webster's then.
Most of the classics. Webster's also didn't exist.
I'm funny.
Thomas Jefferson's a cool character. Kind of a jerk, but also a cool character.
He would probably have a Kindle.
Yes, he would probably have a Kindle. He was all about new technology.
And reading.
And reading, yeah. All right, so to end with Cyrus, let's see. We talked about his reign, we talked about his death, we don't have much about his rise, and we talked about his legacy. He was succeeded by his first son, Cambyses, who didn't rule for a particularly long time before he was replaced by the very, very controversial figure of Beridia, who may or may not have been an imposter.
Okay.
Not totally sure about that. But he was succeeded by, of course, Darius the Great.
Yes.
Who we will talk about next time. Yeah, so that is our first great ruler of history.
Nice. Yeah, I'd say it was great. Had the code of conduct, had little slavery, had a good system of governance, and he scared the crap out of horses with ugly horses known as Campbells.
Yes, that's exactly what he did.
All right, well, if you want the bullet points, write those down. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Hey, thanks for listening. You can expect an episode every 2 weeks with an occasional extra in the off weeks. Right now, we are about 6 episodes ahead, but these are kind of slow to make and we're both busy, so I expect that gap to close quickly. So with that out of the way, here are some goofs from this episode for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
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 And yeah. I wish I had been just a tad bit more prepared for this. I need to look up how to pronounce this word. Okay, there is no pronunciation guide.
Google Translate.
Oop, I'm clicking a pen. I shouldn't be doing that.